Good morning. Hello. You can say hello back. Hi. Hi. My name's Dave Guest, and I have the delightful job of guiding through people's presentations here in the Masterclass Theatre here at Eurobus Expo 2024. Now, the halls are buzzing. They were yesterday. They will be again today, with innovation featuring over 190 exhibitors showcasing the latest advancements in coach and bus industry. From state-of-the-art vehicles to innovative software, suppliers from across the supply chain are eager to demonstrate their products and engage with you. A key highlight of the show every time we state it, of course, is the Innovation Challenge, where exhibitors are competing for your votes to win awards for their latest products. Those with the most votes will perform up on stage here and pitch to our own brand of dragons on Thursday. It's something to be seen, so please make sure you go to the Innovation Gallery to register your votes for the companies which you would like to see in that challenge. Now, another innovation this time is that we're hosting the first CPT Operator Forum, brought to you by our show partner, the Confederation of Passenger Transport. The forum aims to foster knowledge and explore practical solutions to core industry challenges. Today, we'll be addressing significant issues facing the industry, pose challenging questions, and share insights from an operator's perspective. We'll explore themes such as accessibility, recruitment, and the future landscape of the bus and coach industry. Please make sure that during these sessions you feel free to ask questions that may be burning in your mind. Well, we'll get things started now, so please join me in welcoming Graham Vidler, the CEO of the Confederation of Passenger Transport. Graham.
Thank you, David, and good morning and welcome, everybody. My name's Graham Vidler. I'm CEO of CPT. And like the rest of the team at CPT, I'm really proud to be a show partner again for another successful Eurobus Expo. And I'm really, really proud and really, really excited to be here at the start of the first ever CPT Operator Forum. What's the Operator Forum all about? Well, it's a chance to focus on the issues which operators are dealing with here and now, or will be dealing with very, very soon, or should be thinking about now and thinking about the impact on their business. It's a chance to come together and start to co-create solutions to some of those issues and opportunities, and start to build more efficient ways of working. And the thing that I really want to emphasize is that word start, because this is all about an introduction to CPT and what we do. We'll start to make some progress today. We'll start to identify best practice, some ideas for innovation. But what we'll also do is introduce you to CPT's world-class operations team. We'll introduce you to some of CPT's network of suppliers, because we want to make sure that CPT members going forward have got the opportunity to tap into that network of expertise whenever and however they need it. So very much the start of a conversation today, and I hope a very fulfilling, interesting and engaging start to that conversation. So without further ado, let me hand back to our host, David Guest, to introduce our first session. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Graham. That was Graham Vidler, the CEO of the CPT. Or was it? With artificial intelligence developing at breakneck pace, we're constantly told to be wary of everything that we see and hear. The technology, as we all know, has been used to create so-called deep fakes of famous folks saying things they would never dream of saying. Rest assured, though, that really was Graham Vidler who just spoke to you then. But the fact is, everywhere we look, from adverts for mobile phones to articles about writing articles, artificial intelligence is front and centre. While some are embracing the new opportunities, others are wary of the unknown. But Pandora has opened the box, and there's no turning back. AI is here to stay. So during this session, we're going to be looking at some of the ways in which AI could benefit your businesses. Hopefully, we'll be able to answer some of the questions that you may have and offer a glimpse into how others may be gaining advantage using AI. We'll be hearing from two speakers, and then there'll be a chance to ask any questions that still linger in your mind. Our first speaker is Eric Alter. He is Risk and Cyber Engagement Leader at Marsh. Now, Eric's been with Marsh for 18 years and leads risk and cyber and AI engagement for the corporate and commercial business. He specializes in helping clients identify, measure, prioritize, and manage risk. Please make him feel very welcome, Eric Alter.
Good morning, one and all. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. So, just a quick question. Who in the room thinks AI is real? Marvellous. So, there's a very well-known record by a certain band called Public Enemy called Don't Believe the Hype. Welcome to the world of AI. This clicker. Wrong clicker. Great. Talking on tech and can't use it. So it is becoming more and more prevalent in everything that we do. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have benefits. I'm not saying that you can't do some really, really clever things with it. And people talk about some of that separately. But you've got to be cautious. So there are primarily 4 types of AI. There are 2 of them at the moment. Firstly, reactive AI, had it for years. Algorithms came about in the late 1950s. And what we're looking at now is faster processors, larger memory, and that enables this kind of technology to function. If you use spam filters, Netflix, any of these sites, then it will automatically feed you suggestions. Where it's quite risky is within the world of social media because it sets up echo chambers. So if you are looking at Instagram, TikTok, etc., it does effectively create echo chambers. Limited memory AI does learn from the past. It does make predictions and it does do some fairly clever stuff. But again, it's based on algorithms and it is limited in its ability. Where we are moving to is AGI, and that's about, depending on how you look at it, 3 to 5 years away. This is where computers will effectively have proper, true decision-making processes. And it will really be very, very clever. So for instance, within an educational environment, if you have a class of 20 pupils, all of whom are at a different level of understanding, the AGI will be able to identify where each student is and effectively shape the learning accordingly. It's also going to lead to proper autonomous vehicles, more effective supply chain mapping, etc., etc. So, the singularity. Arnie knocking at your door going, I'll be back. 35 to 100 years away. Some people say it's going to be quicker. Some people say it's not going to happen at all, but if some kind of intelligent AI starts to appear, which has proper consciousness, we could be in trouble because it could very rapidly work out that we are not logical. So always make sure you've got a plug at the ready that you could pull out if it goes rogue. So generative AI is very good for art and design, music composition. Drake and The Weeknd released a single on Spotify that was created by AI. It was so terrible, they immediately took it away again. Content creation is very good. Virtual worlds. So some of the war footage you're currently seeing in the news isn't real. It's actually from gaming. And the reason I know that is because I have a colleague whose husband works in that industry, and he actually recognized some of the footage. Fashion and product design, yep, again, it's quite good. If you do ask it to write a book, prepare to be bored, because it doesn't have that human soul. Predictive AI, nothing new. Financial forecasting, behavior analysis, demand forecasting. Healthcare, really interesting in healthcare. So you have a surgeon or a consultant who's been in theatre all day. At the end of the day, they have to review some of the scans. They're tired. They may miss something. The AI does not. It will scan the X-ray and it'll pick up any anomaly. And we've already had cases specifically within cancer treatment where women have had very, very early stage breast cancer. It's been spotted by the AI and they've been able to treat it without any kind of really aggressive interference. Fraud detection, again, nothing new. So AGI, advanced customer service chatbots, the Turing test will be passed, or it has been passed already. Also, please bear in mind that a couple of weeks ago, a young man fell in love with a bot. The bot suggested he kill himself, and he did. So you've got to be very careful about some of this stuff. I've talked about the education. I've talked about the healthcare diagnosis. It's clever stuff. And when you start looking at AGI, it does start to ape humanity in a more effective manner. So is it being used in the bus industry? Absolutely. Perspective, who will be talking funnily enough in a few minutes, Mosaic, Optibus, so resource utilization, analysis, route optimization, healthcare I've touched on, entertainment, it's quite funny. In the entertainment industry, there was a strike in Hollywood about 6-8 months ago called by Brian Cox, the actor, as opposed to the physicist. And the reason he called the strike is because he was concerned about deep fake. Now, talking about deep fake, you've already mentioned that. So vocal deep fake's nothing new now. You can download free voice cloning software from the internet and go and have some fun. So basically, if you don't like someone, record their voice for 4 seconds, run it through there and have some fun in their lives. Now, physical deepfakes are becoming are also getting there now. So there was a fraud in Hong Kong about a month ago where the board thought they were talking to a finance director. They were not. They were actually talking to a fake, and they transferred $20 million, which they won't get back. But you've got to be careful with this. And by the way, with voice deepfake, how many of you have got kids? How many of you got elderly parents? Okay, so this is what you do. You get a phone call from your child. Mummy, my phone's been stolen and I'm with a friend and he can buy me a new phone. So if you can transfer some money to them, is that okay? No, it's not. Okay, so what school do you go to? What's your date of birth? What's your favorite pet? When did I last send you to your room for being a rude little bugger? So it's things like that. And within parents, you need to warn your parents that they must not engage with these people until they hang up and they call you back. And you will then say, yeah, actually, it is me. Now, on the physical deepfake side and also on the voice deepfake side from a corporate perspective, you need to start looking at putting in place some controls. So some of the things we're looking at is passwords. So party number one has a password, party number two who makes the phone call has to complete that password. Or hang up, walk up to the individual, engage in proper human interaction, something that seems to be lost on the youth, and find out whether it's real or not. So this is why I'm a cynic. This is the Gartner hype cycle, and it looks at what is happening in this world. So at the moment, you have the innovation trigger. This is where it all starts. And this is also where the hype starts. People like Elon Musk who say that none of us are going to have jobs. We're going to live under benevolent AI, if only Donald Trump was AI. Sorry, no political points to be made there, because you could switch him off. We are going to be paid a universal wage, and if you do want to do a job, it'll just be a hobby. Please bear in mind this bloke also thinks we're going to be living on Mars. He's a disruptor, so he's a very, very clever individual. He has some phenomenal ideas, but some of his stuff is just too way out there. And what we're looking at is a huge amount of hype, fed by the press, fed by fear, fed by all kinds of nonsense. I went to an AI conference a couple of weeks ago. I got into a conversation over breakfast with two banks, and they were saying, well, you know, we're using AI to increase efficiency, and it's really effective. So I asked them a really daring question. So what? And they looked at me. I said, so what? You're using AI to drive efficiency. So what? What's the value? Where's the value in what you're doing? Because efficiency, for the sake of efficiency, is inefficient. So, for instance, with what is now called CX, or customer experience, customer service is fine with me, if you use it there and you overmanage the agents, bearing in mind it costs £6,000 per agent to replace them, if you overuse and overmanage them, they will get fed up. Their interaction with your customers will start to suffer. That means your business will start to suffer, and therefore the efficiency has actually led to inefficiency. So when you're looking at the utilizing AI, make sure you look not just at the efficiency, but look at the value. Look at what it delivers for your organization. So we're very much on the peak of inflated expectations. We are starting slowly but surely to head for the trough of this illusion, and where people go, this is just a load of nonsense. It isn't. Then we move to the slope of enlightenment. That's where it starts to have real applications. And Dave will take you through that because that's already there. And then you get to the plateau of productivity. That's when you start to use it on an ongoing basis. Now, there are some fundamental risks. So algorithmic bias and discrimination. Poo in, poo out. That's effectively the way to look at it. The example I often use is in healthcare. So we live in a country where 86% of the population are Caucasian. 14% are a huge mix of different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different cultures. Different cultures have different disease patterns. Prostate cancer is far more prevalent in black men than it is in white men. Sickle cell anemia tends to be a disease which affects the black community. Diabetes tends to be an issue within the Bangladeshi community. Now, unless the AI recognizes that, there is a risk that it will mistreat or misprescribe. So you need to train the AI properly. You need to make sure that where it gets its data from is correct. And just to give you an example of how that can go rogue, Gemini, Google's Gemini, fantastic. See, Google's in California and they're all a bit right on there. And they asked Google to create some Vikings and some Nazis. And guess what? They were black. Now, I'm all for political correctness and I'm all for people being given equal opportunities, but I've never ever seen a black Nazi or a black Viking. And if they did exist, I think it'll come as a bit of a surprise. So this is the fact where you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. Now, transparency of decision making is absolutely critical here, so that if you do use an AI, that you're able to track back as to where it might have gone rogue, and you can then fix the problem. So it's not a case where you go, well, it just is what it is. No, it isn't. You need to be able to check. Data privacy and security key. One of the simplest things you can do around managing and controlling your data is encryption. Encrypt at rest, encrypt in transit, encrypt in backup. Because if the data is stolen or compromised, it's of no use to the third party. Legal and regulatory compliance is nascent, it's evolving. At the moment, it looks a little scary, simply because you don't. So it starts from a supply chain perspective. It goes right the way up the supply chain. So if you're a provider of open source software that is used to create an AI solution, that AI solution goes rogue. Under current legislation, they can go right the way up the supply chain to the provider of the open source software. The other thing is, previously, under health and safety legislation, if somebody trips over, if I sort of walk along the stage and there's a wire and I trip over it and I hurt my knee, once I finish crying, I can go to the doctor, get my knee seen to, and prove that I tripped over a wire, and I can then sue. With AI, you don't need that proof. I've been harmed by AI. Prove it. Don't have to. So clearly, this is nascent. Regulations, and therefore, it's going to take a while to bleed through. However, a lot of organizations already have to just adjust existing structures, assess the risk, put mitigation strategy in place, make sure you've got proper incident response and crisis management plans in place, and specifically because of the world we're now living in, that it includes effectively how you reach out to your customers. So have proper communication plans in place. And insurance. I always say insurance is the response of last resort. Even though I work for the world's biggest insurance broker, avoiding a claim is better than putting in a claim. Now, that also means that you have to communicate with your insurers as to what you're doing. Because AI, whilst from my perspective, AI is just cyber in a different hat, under a different hat, the insurers may say, no, it's actually not. It's something different. And they may then say, well, I'm sorry, we're not settling that claim. You didn't tell us you were working with AI. So then you might think, well, let's look at our tech E&O policy. Ah, but you didn't mention you were using AI. It doesn't respond. So then the company suffers a large loss, and the D&O policy is activated where those impacted by the loss try to pursue the board. And the D&O insurer says, no cover for AI. So make sure that you always talk to your insurance when you're utilizing this tech. So there are some very standard rules of the road. Do use the tool to assist with a wide range of tasks, but do not rely on it for automated decision making. You see, it hallucinates. It makes things up. So in America, a judge called two lawyers into his chambers and said, where did you get this case law? ChatGPT. The case has never happened. I had a case where I did a talk on AI, and I was working with a lawyer who was doing a talk on the regulatory framework, and whilst I was doing my talk, he was obviously bored. He decided to look up the origins of the name of his firm, which is entirely made up. Not according to ChatGPT. There were two people, and this is where they went to university, etc., etc. These people never existed. So be very, very careful from that perspective. It's also not very good at calculations. Check the responses you get back and look at them with a critical eye. Don't just accept them. Don't over-rely on their accuracy. Make sure you check it. Be mindful of IP, both yours and third parties. You've got to be very careful with that. The other thing is don't use the output for any purpose that is unethical or illegal or which seeks to harm specific groups of people. So let me give you an example. And again, this just goes to show that it's nothing new. 2014, Alexander Nix, Cambridge Analytica, was employed by Steve Bannon, who, funnily enough, even though he worked for Trump, Trump had never heard of, as was always the case. And they managed to hoover millions of records from Facebook and then use them to target African-American voters in marginal Democrat-Republican seats, because historically, African-American voters tended to vote Democrat. So they tried to dissuade them from voting. This was election interference. This was utilizing what is now termed AI, algorithms. Be aware of the risk of bias in the results. So make sure that when you use these, there isn't any bias in there. Amazon have already been in trouble on that. The other big issue, of course, is now somebody applies for a job, they use AI or ChatGPT to generate the CV, and then the recruitment company use ChatGPT to read the CV. So it starts to become a little bit disjointed. Be aware of, experiment with different use cases, so find out what works for you. Make sure that it's applicable. And the type of work that Dave has done, they've come up with solutions that have been thoroughly tested, that add value, that work for you. But there are loads of organizations out there who are just pushing a technology for the sake of technology. The other thing is, don't use the tool for profiling or scoring individuals. Have any of you seen the Black Mirror episode where the lady is having a bit of a bad day, and as she goes through her day, it gets worse and worse, and she loses more and more of her social score? Yeah, that's real. In China, that is now real. So if you are seen, at least according to Jordan Peters, is it, if you are seen crossing the road and you are going against a green light or going through a red light, you'll get photographed. And then they will send you a fine, they will send notification to your family and friends, and they will lower your social score. So we've got to use this technology responsibly and sensibly. Don't believe all the hype, question. Use what works. Look at value. The end of the world is not nigh, not as a result of AI anyway. It's a very interesting, very useful technology that will continue to evolve, but make sure when you look at it, look for value. And that's me.
Thanks, Eric. If you'd like to just stay on stage, I'm sure you'll have questions for Eric shortly. But before then, I'd like to introduce you to our second speaker in the session. He's Pete Ferguson, the CEO of Prospective.io at First Bus Scheduling. Now, Prospective.io is a software company that's supporting major transport operators and authorities to improve passenger experience, increase vehicle utilisation, and accelerate EV adoption through the use of predictive analytics and automation. Please give him a warm welcome, Pete.
Thanks very much. Right, okay, so with a great introduction from Eric, I think this one will do it. I think it's okay, let me just check. Yeah, we're okay. I want to talk a little bit about how all this risk and potential that Eric was talking about smashes up against the practical reality of daily transport operations, to kind of bring it back to our world of how we get on with delivering quality services for passengers. So as a company, we work with transport operators and authorities in a range of areas across network planning, scheduling, timetabling, and daily operations. And so I'm going to give you a sense of how we've been embedding some machine learning methods, optimization, simulation, various analytical tools into the process of actually doing the day-to-day work in transport operations. And you get a sense of all the promise associated with this work and the things you really need to make sure you get right. We're going to move on. Lost it. No. Aha, fantastic. Right. So let's start with why this should be interesting to us in the first place. So the first thing to consider is, what is it we're trying to achieve? Now, if we work backwards from the responsibility of a transport operator, is to deliver what passengers want in their daily life to get to where they want to get to. So let's look at the priorities of passengers first and work backwards from that to work out how AI can be useful for us. So First Bus ran a large survey of about 13,000 people to see what their main priorities were when it came to actually the quality of the public transport service they were receiving. The first thing, the number one thing that everyone really wanted was reliability. And by reliability, that means, will the service run and will it run on time? So if we want to think about where AI should be applied, we should be starting from those priorities, working backwards and thinking about actual practical, useful tools that are actually going to help the end customer, the end passenger. So we want to think of ways in which we can increase confidence that a journey will be happening as planned, give people the ability to check real-time information, and have confidence that the journey will run on time. So how can AI help with this? So as a company, we try to provide assistance, and I think Eric used that word, and I would repeat it. It's an assistant for existing roles, existing jobs within transport operations organizations. The idea is that you can provide intelligent recommendations and then automate a lot of the menial tasks around the completion of the day-to-day. So we provide outputs for yard management, dispatching, control room operations, all the way through to scheduling and network planning. But for today, I'm just going to talk about scheduling as a use case. So we've been working with a number of operators, including First Bus, to improve the way in which they run their timetable design and scheduling process. And what we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years is an explosion of the data necessary to do this in an automated fashion. So there's more demographic data, there's more fleet telemetry data, there's more land use and network data, there's more ticketing transaction data. A lot of this data is unstructured, it's messy, but it's potentially hugely valuable to actually understand where passengers want to go, when they want to go, the journeys they want to take, and how they're affected by the service you're running. So the first thing we do is we clean this data. And if you start trying to apply AI applications without doing the homework of actually making sure that the data is really fully clean, structured, and related to each other, you're going to have all sorts of, you may call them hallucinations, you may just call them errors in the outputs that you're generating from your application. So a very large part of our work, probably 70 to 80% of the total time in actually deploying a piece of software like this, is in the basic tasks of data engineering. Matching data, cleaning data, structuring data, relating data, checking data, testing data before you move on. So to give you an example, we collect GPS data directly from the vehicles. We collect data around the timetables and schedules that already exist. And you can see there are all sorts of discrepancies that exist in the industry between the different data sets that get generated. So the green dots here are where the vehicle was actually traveling. The orange line is where the timetable thought the vehicle was traveling. So unless we go and scrutinize exactly what's happening at a local level, then we can really misunderstand the outputs that we're seeing through the data. So if we had assumed that the travel time to get around this route was driven by that orange line, then we'd assume the vehicle was probably traveling 40, 50 miles per hour through the center of Leeds. That was probably unlikely. So this kind of work is really central to actually getting good results. The advantage, once you actually get to a position where you can deploy these methods, is really in two areas. One is prediction, forecasting the likely implications of the design choices you're making. How many people will use the service? Will it be on time? Will it cost you what you think it will cost you? Will it be reliable? And the other is just to get more done. Can you automate processes that are best completed by a computer rather than using manual processes with modern software, but things that don't automate the actual micro decisions that have to be made? So some of our software really is very much user-driven, but it's providing resources that people can use to a large extent, predict what will happen on the road before it gets deployed. So first is seen a significant advantage from this. Now, I'm not saying that this is even everywhere and that everyone would be able to benefit from this kind of impact, but you can see that this kind of technology can lead to concrete improvements in punctuality, in start time adherence on trips, in the reliability of services. Introducing these kind of new schedules, you see typically a very significant jump in the overall punctuality of the service without actually having to deploy more resource. So in this sense, data and the ability to manage it can be seen as an asset for a business as much as the CapEx or the OpEx expenses you have. Data can actually be a resource because it's enabling you to deliver more. The more you're able to use it and leverage it, the more you're able to deliver on a daily basis. But there are also qualitative differences. So one thing the industry has generally struggled with is providing punctuality at the times when it really matters, when it matters most. If you think about the dynamics of traffic on the road, the point at which there are more passengers traveling on the network is the point at which there's more congestion, there's more traffic, and there's longer boarding and alighting times, and there's more variability, it's more chaotic. And it's exactly those times where punctuality tends to drop on bus services, but it's also the point of time when most people are affected. So you have this double whammy. But when you can deploy kind of data-driven systems like this, you can start to make sure that the actual allocation of time is very, very context-specific. It's very, very sensitive to the individual trip on the individual day, the individual week of the year. Make sure you're actually taking into account all those nuances and deliver something that's consistently punctual. So on the right-hand side, you can see after a schedule's been introduced, you have high punctuality throughout the day, even during those periods where you have the kind of peak of passenger boarding rates. So if you look at this kind of red line, this kind of Batman cape shape, this is essentially how many people are boarding at different times of the day, and then the blue bars are how punctual it is. Right, so let's just briefly think about some of the challenges of adopting this. Now, What these solutions do is to provide tools and assistance with which you can achieve your objectives as an operator or authority. They do not tell you what your objective should be, and neither should they. These should be systems that provide empowerment to operators and authorities rather than take control away. And that means the challenge of looking at trade-offs is still very much at the center of the timetabling and scheduling process, as it is in any other operational process. So if you're an operator, you have unavoidable trade-offs to make between what you spend to try and improve punctuality, what you spend to try and improve service frequency, the simplicity of the timetable, the alignment of the timetable with people's end goals and destinations in terms of when they want to get to where they want to get to. And you're looking for the best trade-off against all those decisions. So these systems need to be deployed in such a way where there's a very close loop between the nature of the software and the methods and processes that local teams who really understand their own local markets take to make end decisions about what they're trying to achieve. Do they want something that is a high-frequency service and therefore can change in terms of its structure throughout the day in order to be as efficient as possible? Do they need something that is more simplistic, that you can remember because it's a low-frequency service and you want to make sure that you can just have it at the back of your mind? These are trade-offs that are going to be different in each route, in each city, in each town in the country. And so these systems need to be deployed in such a way where they don't determine exactly what you should aim for, but they help you achieve that. So all of these applications really need to be embedded inside these kinds of software infrastructures. So AI cannot be deployed successfully in isolation from everything that precedes it, in terms of the data engineering, in terms of the software, in terms of the management of all the processes over which you deploy your AI application. And I think that the final point I'd really make is just, it's not a static process. Often we see kind of views about AI and these applications as if it's a static thing, as if the status of these applications is not going to change. It's constantly changing, and to make the most of the technology, you need to go into it with a view of continuous iteration. Try to improve services using these methods, monitor the results, and monitor it not just by listening to the loudest voices, but actually looking at the data and seeing how people actually respond to the changes, and then make adjustments and continually adjust, continually adjust. So when we're deploying these systems, we're very much working closely with end operators, end authorities, to run through this process of iteration. We look at the punctuality that exists on the road, the mileage, the costs, how the NPS, so Net Promoter Score, what do passengers actually think about the results? What do they actually How do they vote with their feet? Is there an increase in ridership? And then we can go back and adjust the assumptions that go into the systems. So I'll just leave you with this message that I think the best way of thinking about the potential of AI in this space is that they are assistants, not masters. They're there to help you achieve your objectives. They don't tell you what those objectives should be. And as long as you're sticking to that general principle, then there's a lot of potential, a lot of value. Right, leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Pete. If you'd like to take a seat there. Eric, you were talking quite rightly about the hype that surrounds AI at the moment. Yeah. So if an operator is looking to invest in it, how do they cut through the hype? How do they distinguish the fantasy from the facts? Where do they go to get that information?
Look, the reality is, caveat emptor, buyer beware. So I've always worked on the premise, if it looks like a dog, barks like a dog, wags its tail like a dog, and likes to have its tummy tickled like a dog, chances are it's a dog. If it's too good to be true, if it's offering you services that are far more advanced than anybody else, I would be suspicious. Also look at the pedigree of the organization, look who they've worked with in the past, because sector experience is more important than technical experience in this case. So there's, if you've got someone like Dave here whose business functions specifically within your sector, that's what you want to look at. Just because Microsoft say they can do something similar doesn't mean it's going to be as good. So make sure it's sector specific, make sure you challenge, put key performance indicators in place, put service level agreements in place, and make sure that you are protected from a legal perspective and insurance perspective through the third party should you go rogue.
And Pete, your main message there was, don't assume it's going to take everything over, use it as an assistant. Whereas I think that a lot of the hype is this will mean you can get rid of this bunch of staff or you can do this thing far more efficiently. It's being aware of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say there there are challenges ahead for the industry because these systems will get more sophisticated over time. And as they get more sophisticated, they will be able to take on higher level, more strategic thinking related tasks. So an example may be that right now, these systems can help you deliver improvements in punctuality, because that's one thing that passengers care about. In the future, they may be able to give you outputs that will help you improve the popularity of your service, taking into account punctuality and a whole set of other trade-offs, because they'll have the data available to be able to make those calls. So it's not that it's always going to be a case that the same level will always exist, the same relationship will always exist between the users of these systems and the nature of the output of the system. But I think the general principle has to be at any level, the end user still has to be in control of what they're trying to achieve and the monitoring of the outputs.
And Eric, I think you just wanted to...
Yeah, I mean, and the danger is, so I'm 63 today, so you can all sing me happy birthday afterwards. But the danger is that I come from a world where computers worked for me. You live in a world where you work for the computer. So if you're wondering why stuff like TikTok, WhatsApp, Facebook, Tesco Charge, Club Cards, Nectar cards are free, it's very simple. You're the product. They're hoovering data. They're using that data to market against you. One of the, not going to mention any names for legal purposes, there's a large Chinese retailer that offers huge numbers of goods at a highly discounted price. They're not interested in selling you the goods. They're interested in your data because that has value. So you need to remember that you are in charge of it and do not put it in charge of you, which is why that plug and that off switch is always going to be very important.
Okay. Any questions from the floor? Anything that anyone would like to put to us? I mean, one thing that I would be interested in knowing, I'm sure maybe some operators are a bit shy to put their hands up, would be, if you're going to invest in AI for your business, how long does it take before you start to see a return on the investment and improvement in your procedures?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best way of thinking about it is that it's an increasing level of return. So you can make quite significant progress with relatively simple models. You don't have to introduce the most sophisticated systems from day one, and you probably shouldn't try. You need to make sure you've got a good understanding of data, have the data accessible to you, so humans can actually just make better decisions with visibility of the data. You need to think of it as a journey toward adding more and more value. So you can actually get a good return on investment early on in a program if you're working with the right organization who's prepared to deploy the relevant tools at the relevant time. Over the long term, the return on investment really comes from the relationship between the quality of the service you're providing and the popularity in terms of ridership, in terms of the commercial attractiveness of the service, and also the efficiency of the way in which you run your operations. But these are things that are built up layer after layer over time. And anyone going into it needs to recognize that it's not going to happen overnight, and anyone that's saying it will, you should be a bit wary.
The snake oil salesman. But obviously you're working for a massive company first. How realistic is it for smaller operators to get involved in this then?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely an issue there. The fundamental requirement for applying these technologies is data. If you don't have enough data, you can't do it. You simply won't be able to learn from the data in such a way that you can make those accurate predictions. So it's obviously more challenging for smaller operators who collect, by definition, less data with which to train these models. There are, however, ways in which I think the industry will be able to evolve to make that easier for smaller operators. Firstly, there are open data sets. So if any of the smaller operators are contributing to the bus open data service, for example, that is a collected data set that everyone can benefit from when these applications are deployed upon it. So it's a real incentive for smaller operators to invest their time to make sure that's stringent. And the other thing is direct collaboration between smaller operators to build larger data sets. I think there are ways...
Is that going to work, though, competitors kind of sharing data in that way?
Well, I think it needs to be managed via these kind of processes and systems like pods that are actually the regulator is coming in and ensuring the data is managed properly. But I think it is one way in which the industry can be more egalitarian in terms of the potential to build on top of it.
Okay, Eric.
And just the one thing I would say, there is a two-word question you should always ask when somebody is promising to deliver the earth. So what? What is the value? Because they could be marketing the most beautiful blue paint, but everybody wants green. Always ask the question, so what? What will this give me? What is the value? Because it goes back to the comment I made earlier. Efficiency for the sake of efficiency it's inefficient. And also bear in mind, if you become totally reliant on this technology and it goes rogue, you've got a problem.
But the one reassuring thing I took from your presentation, Eric, was we're about a century away from the Arnold Schwarzenegger cyborg situation. Thank goodness. Anyway, gentlemen, we're out of time, so thank you very much indeed. And it's your birthday today, Eric, so the drinks are on, Eric, a bit later on.
Alas, I have to get the train.
Thanks very much indeed, guys.